Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And I wanted to introduce you to Sarah Jenkins, who I know as Jenks because I've known her a very long time, who is Managing Director of Saatchi and Saatchi. And she is also chair of campaign's Female Frontier Awards and co-founded the Advertising Diversity Task Force. Forgive me stumbling over my words. And I think it's just the embodiment of a female creative source for good and intelligence that's done an immense has had an immense career. So we're thrilled that you're here. Thank you very much for joining us. And we also got Nicola Hill, who I've also known extremely long time and is Managing Director of the Garden Productions and formerly of the BBC and Orion Films, and is doing fabulous things, lots of telly programmes we will know of. 24 Hours and A&E, I think, needs no introduction. And she is here today to talk to us all about creative media and modern culture. And I kind of wanted to kick off. First of all, thank you very much for taking the time out. I think you're both extraordinarily busy. To talk to you firstly about, I guess, this year, because this year has been a crazy year. And how have you found it? Jenks, if we start with you, like in terms of a creativity, practically, I mean, has it been an absolute shocker?
I mean, it's been extraordinary, hasn't it? And I started my new job a year ago, so I was only like 3 months in when we went into lockdown, which added to the crazy. But yeah, I was getting towards the end of the year, so I wanted to get a bit more reflective. And actually, on a physical level, sort of physical transition to working at home and at your kitchen table and doing everything on Zoom, I can't believe how incredibly adaptable everyone's been, and how I've been, how the team have been, the agency have been. Like on a physical level, extraordinary, but like mentally and emotionally, it's been a brutal year. It's been extraordinary and hard, and we've got to we're going to have to, I think, work really hard to make sure that we take the learning and the crazy of this year and make sure we don't just snap back into next year when we can finally get back in the office.
Nicola, how's it been for you on the ground with like someone like 24 Hours and A&E? That is not easy.
Well, to start with, I think it was a real shock. Right across production, everything shut down. But I think we were very quick out of the blocks. I think we deal with risk all the time. It's just we work in very risky environments. So and actually we approached Channel 4 again and said, let's just do it, because actually with 24 Hours and A&E, the hospital were really, they sort of locked us out because we were due to start it and we had to shut it down. And they were keen to show the workings of the staff. And they said, yeah, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but why we need to document that. So yeah. We have a very good relationship with the hospital, and they are absolutely astonishing. And so we have now just completed filming this current series of 24 Hours and A&E, and we had a protocol document that was about that thick. But we managed it. So it just also goes to show that anything's possible. You can adapt. You just have to be a little bit sort of risk-takey as well, I think.
How do you, I mean, this is to both of you, to be honest, but how do you weave the sensitivity of this time in terms of what you produce rather than the practical nature of that? Like it's tricky, surely, in terms of, you know, the touch points and the sensitivity around what you're producing.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we deal very much in, because we're mainly sort of factual programming and documentaries, we deal a lot anyway with human stories. So we're very used to kind of teasing that out of our contributors. And we have amazing, I mean, I can't take credit for most of that. It's an amazing team behind it who are able to do that. So actually, in a way, it's sort of business as usual for us. But I imagine that it's harder kind of in other genres because it's sort of what we do. So actually it's interesting stories again in this climate. So
yeah, I guess for you it's like you say, it's a bit more not business as usual, but you're talking around sensitive subjects and real truths and human stories, and that's reflected in whatever's happening in the world, I guess. What about for you, Jenks, in terms of, I mean, not only, I know practically it will be an absolute shocker to produce anything, but in terms of the stories that you tell and the sensitivity around that, has that been hard, a challenge?
Yeah, I guess because when it was so sudden, wasn't it? Actually going in, when we go back to March of last year, we went from not really talking about it to a couple of weeks later, the UK went into full lockdown. So I think our initial problem or challenge was like, are the campaigns that are on air appropriate? We just launched an amazing campaign for Direct Line, the We're On It campaign. We said goodbye to Winston Wolfe, and we had Transformers bursting out of buildings. We had Robocop bursting into an office. So it was big, blockbuster. And we were like, is this appropriate now? Should we be more sensitive to it? And we kept it on air just to test it out. And actually, we learned very quickly that it was doing really well because people love the escapism of it. So I think it is about finding that balance between absolutely being empathetic and telling the right human stories at the right time, but people do need escape. And I think it's about just being really leaning into those two levers and understanding when to pull them.
I think when you produce any content, and we've certainly found it, at the beginning, it's like when something global happens in this pandemic, you're not sure what the tone is. But like you say, you very quickly realize that everybody needs the escapism. And I guess it's why it's so fascinating to talk to you both, because you produce things that are even more important now than they were before, almost, because we need to escape. We want to enjoy those amazing stories that we get through TV advertising. We've got to watch, you know, the amazing programs that you produce, Nicola, because actually that is where we escape from what's going on. And
I mean, we get viewing figures every day to see what people are watching, and it's definitely all about joy and escapism. And that's the message that seems to be coming out of the broadcasters as well, in terms of what they want for content. And I think there was a bit right at the beginning of lockdown where there was a sort of fascination, a kind of, and almost like around it, almost sort of macabre in some ways, because we had never faced anything like this before, and you have to tell those stories as well. But I think there was then a sort of a kind of saturation point, and people had had enough of it, and so it's definitely all about kind of joy now, I think, and looking to the future, which sits well with me because I'm a terribly optimistic person, so I can't do anything but look to the future and be optimistic.
You're so right. That Great British Bake Off had like the record audience viewings, and no surprise, because it's a tent of joy, isn't it? It's just humanity at its finest.
Something like 13 million people watch that. I'm sure you Sarah, I'm sure you look at the viewing figures as well. It's a very core part of what you do. But I mean, astonishing. Yeah, those are astonishing figures.
And the great thing about something like Great British Bake Off is it's such a unifier. Like you don't see big shifts in the demographics either, do you? So that is an amazing totem for us about what we should be doing at the moment to look after the nation.
Is there, because it's such a big platform now, and even more people are watching things than perhaps before, and actually different age groups as well are tuning in more probably. Is that platform, is there a massive responsibility? Like, do you feel more of a pressure to kind of get it right, or is it always the same as it's always been? I mean, is that sort of passed quite quickly now?
No, I think there is always a pressure to get it right, and of course things change very quickly, so you have to be very adaptable. And we work very closely with our broadcasters to make sure that we're, sort of hit it. And you don't always get it right. I mean, that is the truth of it. And it's often sort of trial and error. But I think it is important to read the mood and also to sort of document the moment as well. But also read when the mood changes.
Because you are reflecting society in everything that you guys produce. And have you found that that's changed? I mean, obviously, Nicola, you were saying no, because we were always reflecting society, but certainly in advertising and producing those stories and content for people to consume. Jenks, have you found that that's different? I mean, we'll come on in a minute and talk about, inclusion and diversity, because it's so important. But certainly, well, let's talk about it now, because I think it naturally comes on to reflecting society back, and the year this has been, which is massive for so many things. And I know both of you are absolutely passionate about this. you know, how have you found that then about reflecting society and actually the change that's come about this year?
Yeah, should I go? So yeah, gosh, 2020, what a year, not just the global pandemic, but the fact that as society, as an industry, we're having rightly reflecting on the murder of George Floyd and what that did for anyone who's in the business of storytelling and authentic storytelling. So I think because of COVID and because of a greater need for sensitivity and understanding and empathy, that it's made us think about authentic storytelling more. And then when you are able to wrap around that, the importance of telling authentic anti-racist stories as well, it's an incredibly important year, pivotal year. There's no doubt about that. We're seeing it now. We're seeing it with all the Christmas advertising and the inevitable trolling of the supermarkets as they try and get it right. So I'm sure.
Really? So that started, has it?
Yeah, so Sainsbury's have been really heavily trolled because they've got an all-black family. So what we quite often see is a sense of we're all in this together, and you'll see vignettes and you'll see lots of multiple families and multiple ethnicities and a couple of same-sex couples and so on. But it's the fact it's a black family and it's their Christmas and they're holding, you know, it's literally probably for the first time a black British family who are holding their own in a Christmas ad. And it's brilliant, really funny, really charming, and it's a good ad. And well done to Sainsbury's because they've just gone, you don't like it, we're going to double down and we're going to put it on air even more, which is amazing. And the great thing happened just yesterday on Channel 4, where it's going to happen, might be tonight. Yes. So Channel 4 will be airing for the first time ever. All the supermarkets are all airing the same across 2 hour breaks to show solidarity to Sainsbury's. So usually they go, we will not advertise the same. So that
I didn't know they were doing that.
The importance of collective, the importance of making, it's not a gesture, a statement. So it's horrible how far behind we are. And we've definitely got a gap to close, but what a year for momentum. It's been really, really impressive and reassuring to see how advertising and broadcast and content has responded since the summer.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think we are really far behind, and it's something that I feel very sort of passionately about that, and I notice it so much. And actually, if you'd asked me sort of 10, 12 years ago, I probably wouldn't have done, because, and then I realised how systemic it is in our industry, and I kind of look around and you know, and for our industry particularly, there's been a big wake-up call, but I think, you know, there's still a lot of work to do, and I think what I find a bit frustrating is we could have done that work some years ago, so that actually now what we're finding is we talk very much about the frozen middle. So particularly people who are kind of at a moment in their career where they can't build beyond sort of where they are, they find themselves very stuck because it's that sort of catch-22. They haven't got the experience, so they can't get the job, and often we're finding that has been the case, particularly sort of for people from sort of disadvantaged backgrounds or sort of people from different, particularly sort of ethnic backgrounds, and we've been trying to sort of diagnose sort of why that is as an industry, I think, as well. But one of the things, I mean, we're trying to do as a company is we've rewritten our diversity plan, and we want to try to help to kind of move people beyond. So actually, one of the first things I did when I took over as MD was to carve out money in our company budget for diversity, because we can't do everything, but we can do something, and that's really, really important to us, I think. And it's particularly that money we want particularly to go for that frozen middle, as we sort of call it, to give those people those opportunities that they're not getting and they can't get. But yes, so much to do.
I think you hear a lot about diversity, don't you? But inclusion is key, isn't it, in this? I think within creative pursuits and creative media and the roles that you guys do in the company, the stuff that you guys produce, it is that sense of inclusion, that the fact that it is achievable, I guess, and then it comes down to talent, and if you have the inclusion, surely that then helps create the diversity.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you can't have one without the other, because what you end up doing is attracting more diverse talent, and then it's a revolving door and they get spat out. So there's diversity, there's inclusion, and then there's belonging. And when you make belonging your metric, you know, and you want everyone to be able to feel like they belong. So that's definitely what we focus on as a leadership team at Saatchi, is what can we do to create a culture where everyone feels like they belong and everyone can move forward. And by everyone, we mean everyone.
And what kind of things do you do, Jenkins, in terms of feeling that and creating that?
I mean, for sure, we were already on a journey, but it's had a steroid injection since June, and we turned 50 this year. So it's a moment in time. It's a moment for us to create change. So no shortage of ideas, but we've been very clear. There are 5 principles. So it's leadership led. And I think to Nicola's point, it has to be, because you have to put budget and resource, and it's a commercial imperative. So leadership led, number 1 principle, agency built, because all that creativity, energy, experience of diversity or experience of diverse backgrounds, really important. So it's agency built, the ideas come from the agency. It has to be sustainable, has to be measurable, and anything we do has to be open, because we recognize we cannot change things on our own. We're one agency, and even one holding company can't change it. So what can we, anything we do, anyone can still borrow, hack, improve. So there are 5 principles, and as part of our 50th, we've made 3 legacy promises. So we've got Saatchi Ignite, so that's our schools programs. We want to ignite in a generation a passion for creativity and an understanding of the creative industries. And we're doing curriculum learning and loads of great stuff. And that's just, those resources we built, and anyone can take them and go into a school and do them. So we've got Saatchi Ignite, we've got Saatchi Opens. We've re-engineered our entry level for kids who are more ambitious and entrepreneurial, probably have a side hustle. So we're teaching them about the industry, but teaching them business skills so they can run their own, they can go off and run Saatchi Peckham or Saatchi Falmouth, wherever they come from. And then we've got Saatchi Home, which recognises the biggest barrier on a practical level. This is for people from low social mobility, is the cost of living in London. It's horrific. So that's our promise, to make sure there's affordable accommodation for all entry level. We've done it in partnership, really smart way of doing it. And it's our promise. Whoever you are, you can have a home in London. So 3 massive killer legacies that we've got. The agency's come up with the idea, and the agency are now building it, and it's amazing. The schools program is off the hook.
That is incredible. I'd love to talk to you more about that, actually.
Yeah, and look, honestly, because everything we're doing, you can plug straight into the school. It's a gift. You know, they would love to meet you. Saatchi Home.
I'd be really, sort of happy to. I mean, because that's the other thing. I mean, it's the other thing is attracting people into an industry that, particularly my industry, where people know. I mean, people talk about the casting couch. It was a real thing, you know. It was not necessarily a sort of myth. I mean, that's gone and, you know, past, but past a sort of a long time ago. But people kind of, if you don't, it's so important. If you don't reflect back in your makeup, in the stories that you tell, the country that you live in and the world around you, then it's just, you're never going to reach your full capacity. And you're just going to be sort of, it's so important creatively. It's really important to keep modern, really, really important to keep you modern as well. You've got to be diverse. We're still working on it. You know, we're not diverse enough yet.
What's your commentary on, people talk about, you know, there's set quotas for particular, you know, to have a certain diversity within, you know, the work that you produce, or the team that you have around you. Do you see that as a positive?
I see data as a positive. You've got to have the data. If you haven't got the data, you don't know the problem. And if you've got the data, you then have to track progress. So I don't see it as quotas, but you should know where you are, and you should know where you're heading, and then you can build accordingly. So I definitely see that as an important part of any program. Now, you know, measurable is a key principle. You can't measure it if you don't have the data.
Yeah, no, I agree. And actually, I think a lot of the broadcasters are sort of, as part of their contract with producers, they're asking for, they want, it's not so much the data, but they do want percentages. But of course, if you don't have, like you say, if you don't have the data, and if people aren't happy, actually, you can't go on perceived data either. You know, and it's, and I just hope at some point that we can put all of that away, because we've done it and it doesn't matter, and it's just part of what we do, and that becomes part of the structure of how we make telly, actually.
Why do you think it's so different this year, in the sense of, why is this so transformative this year? Because you know, I've been in the industry a long time. Like, there's been waves, haven't there, of certain initiatives and certain campaigns and things. Why is this year so different, do you think? Why is this so transformative? And I don't think it's got anything to do with COVID, or maybe it had, I don't know.
With George Floyd's murders obviously really focused people. in a way, I was really surprised. I personally saw that content on my phone, and it was Saturday morning, and I remember not really watching it properly, thinking, oh God, this is awful. But
yeah, it's terrible again,
I'd seen someone out, Brianna at Tate, so I was just like, and I was so surprised how it blew up. I was like disproportionately surprised. So for whatever reason, it might be after 3 months of lockdown or that particular hot weekend, it triggered people. And I think, I mean, what an awful thing to happen, but thank goodness, as businesses and the nation, there's been a stepping up. So I think, from my observation, would be obviously the horrific murder of George Floyd. The fact we've had the gender pay gap for a few years now, I think that's becoming into fruition. That's forcing change. And of course, we've got a generation coming through who are amazing, who are forcing change and won't accept the status quo. And if you don't get that right, you can't attract great talent. So I think there's lots of things almost coming into fruition. And this year, under the hothouse of COVID, it just made everything blow up a bit more.
I think it's just, the reason I asked the question is because terrible things have happened like that before. And it's why that momentum was behind it. And it's interesting you reflect on, I mean, it also reflects, I think, on the fact that how powerful media and content is these days, and actually, how it force for good, which it's always been, but even more powerful. But like you say, that generation that we aren't, are immense, and they are different.
Generations removed now, ladies.
Yeah.
We're now not the young generation. That's always.
We're not even. I keep getting it wrong. Like I'm so out of it that I keep calling it the wrong gen. It's just like they're behind that one that I talk about. But it is. They are different. And like you were saying before about a side hustle, they do always have a side hustle, and that's just the norm. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm doing the day to day, but I'm also, baking this, and I've got this side production thing with my friend, and it's immense. It's quite empowering, I think, to embrace some of their spirit and tenacity is. But then, do you think, Nicola, I guess it's for you, we were all passionate in our youth, and we didn't have some of the tools to keep going with it? Perhaps I was very ideological in my late teens and early 20s about certain aspects of life, and you kind of lose it along the way. Do you think?
I think I didn't understand it actually either, and I think yes, I agree. I mean, Lizzie and I come from a sort of a town where I suppose we were, that was sort of more unusual, wasn't it? It's a bit sort of identical. Possibly.
Well, certainly our families were lefties, and that was unusual where we grew up. That was liberals.
That's why they gravitated towards each other.
Maybe.
And I think that's the thing. And actually, even now, and with everything that happened with over the summer with Black Lives Matter, I've been doing a lot more reading. I'm understanding it more. I'm talking to people. I'm not worrying about that conversation, having that conversation with people, and I want to say, tell me how it feels. Tell me. I want, what can I, and what this is what I'm going to try to do. Like I'm going to, I don't want it to be sort of on somebody to have to kind of teach me. I want to kind of learn it myself and make sure I'm putting it into practice. But I want to have those conversations. I don't want them to be hidden.
I think this is a year of self-reflection. And I think I talked to an amazing Black author last week, talking about diversity in female literature, and the fact that she just said, we were laughing. She was like, I am available any other month of the year apart from October in terms of Black History Month. Because I did ask her view on that, so it's like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And she said, it's always a good thing to create noise on a platform. But what we're seeing is that spread throughout the year, and actually it's just more accessible. And it should be the same with any content we produce. I wanted to ask you about, it would be remiss of me to have two fabulous females who are at the top of their careers and not ask about gender equality, because, I think it comes in the same, maybe not the same basket, but it's certainly in the same, hamper, in the sense of driving inclusion and having both an understanding of that, and also trying to change as we move forward. When you reflect on your own journeys, is there things that you kind of are proud that you did, or are you amazed that you've got to where you've got? Or
I'm definitely amazed that I've got to where I've got 100%.
Imposter syndrome, you know, it just sort of seeps in, like, and I sometimes sit in meetings and I go, and I look around and I think, everybody's looking at me. Oh, they're looking for my opinion. And just, you know, and it always sort of surprises me. And
was it hard to get to where you've got to over the last sort of 25 years being female?
I've gone a sort of, yeah, I mean, I think so. I think it's certainly got better. I mean, my company now is, I don't know the percent, but we're mainly female, actually. And bar the 2 other people on my board who are male, and there's a couple of other people that I think there are, I can't remember what our statistics are, but there's sort of like 70% female. And one of the things that we've done as a company, and we've always done, is been very flexible around people, not just women, but men as well. But, you know, understanding that people have lives outside of, you know, they're outside of work. And so a lot of people work part-time, are, you know, perhaps sort of mothers, or just have a life, you know, and just, you know, sort of want to do other things. And I think that has helped attract women to work with us. And we have a very good reputation for kind of looking after our teams. We work with a lot of freelancers, and we make sure that that we try to, you know, sort of factor that in. But, you know, I think we're unusual in that sort of, it's getting a lot better in that flexibility. And certainly when I started out, you would never have had those conversations with your colleagues about sort of flexibility around your working practices. And it was very much more male dominated, my industry.
What about you, Jenks, in terms of reflecting on that journey and that pathway?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to deconstruct, isn't it? But I guess it's been harder possibly being Black than being a woman. That's probably the thing that it's made me stick out more. It's, you know, the I mean, literally two years ago, it was a really quite prestigious networking event, and someone tried to give me their coat to hang up because I thought it was a token attendant. Like, this is 2 years ago in London. So like, I think that's probably something that's, well, probably hasn't held me back because I'm Black. I work harder and I've got to where I've got to. So it's sort of, but possibly being Black has been more challenging than being a woman, but there's no doubt being a woman doesn't help as well. And it's both how the industry has historically treated women, which was always perhaps a little bit more patronizing or mansplaining, all that crazy. But I think, to Nicola's point, there's also, as a woman, I do have imposter syndrome. I doubt myself. I have to be 100% right to say something. I won't say it if I think I might be right. So I don't back myself, as I've seen some fairly average men do over my career. So yeah, there's a lot. It's
so true. Even as we're talking now, you know, as we've been talking, I'm thinking, does that sound intelligent enough? Am I, you know, it's just, am I saying the right thing, or have I got that wording right? I mean, it's just all the time. There's something just in the back of your head going, you know, and I think it's possibly personal as well, that you might be judged more. But I think,
do you find that, I mean, there's certainly things I reflect on and think, I put up with that, you know. I mean, I really, some of the things that have been said over the years when I worked in the agency side were just sexist and not on, and you just sort of had to laugh them off, or because of go along with them, or just ignore it or something, which wouldn't be the case now, I'm presuming. You know, that really is not, you're not allowed to say that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think society has obviously evolved a lot, hasn't it, over the last decade. I think we're more connected. I think you see some really brilliant networking groups within advertising. There's a group called Bloom, and where they have the Booth of Truth, for example, and there's a lot more digital and real world connectivity where people can go, this thing happened, and someone can go, that is wrong, you can call it. So I think people are able to sort of check in on the things that we might previously have sort of just gone, oh, it's fine, and dismissed it. So I think that those things are helping. There are more female leaders. You can go, this has just happened, or female leaders observing it going, what was that? So that's all helping, but it's not perfect. Yeah, and different agencies have different levels of bad.
Yeah,
I guess you guys being at the top would help influence, you know, the companies that you work in to reflect society and the values that are important to you, and therefore rolling that through. Do you think there's still a lot to be done? I mean, we could talk about sort of, yes, of course there is in terms of diversity and inclusion, but are we on the right path? From what we've talked about, we seem to be certainly in a different place.
Oh yeah, I've seen it change massively over my working life. I do think we are, and I think, but you can't stop. You've got to keep the momentum up. I think that's really, really key as well, particularly in terms of, you know, diversity and inclusion. You can't just take your foot off the pedal and go, well, we've, you know, there we go.
Now. Momentum.
Yeah, we've had our little moment. That was 2020, and now moving on. You've got to keep the kind of pressure on that and keep adapting, I think, and keep listening. It's so important to listen in our roles.
I do think that the youth, God, I sound like some granny, but I do think they're inspirational, because I for myself personally, I do take note. You know, I do think, you know, let's not make this just the year that was a bit strange and was, you know, that was good noise for that now, and then let's move on. You know, it's kind of, I think we've all learned quite a lot about ourselves and about society as part of this kind of year, both in things like, obviously within Black Lives Matter, but also within ourselves, and what's acceptable and what isn't. And perhaps we've done a bit of self-reflection. I've certainly thought about, you know, what I expose my kids to from an arts perspective, and having a far more diverse mix, you know, introducing more cultures into their lives, especially if you live in an area that isn't particularly multicultural. You know, you kind of think it's actually important. It's actually really, it's sort of key to do it. I wanted to ask you about, you know, you guys are massively busy, and, you know, obviously the work that you do can be quite stressful and quite all consuming, especially if you're reflecting society. What kind of things do you do that you can draw strength from, as, you know, as people in your lives? Because we talk a lot about joy and bringing joy to people's lives in the work that we do. So where do you draw strength from?
I definitely, I've tried to have a kind of network outside of my company, either in the industry or outside. So, and actually they tend to be women who I'll just sort of periodically just sort of meet up with for a cup of coffee and just go, you know, how are you doing and what's going on? And have you, you know, found that? And just, in fact, just this morning, I met up with a friend of mine who is also a brilliant woman who has kind of worked in an amazing sort of arts institutions and things, and just, you know, sort of throwing ideas about, sort of talking about how we feel, and she feels all the things that we've talked about as well. And she's, you know, and I look at her and think, you're amazing, you're brilliant. I can't believe you have any self-doubt at all, or should do. And so I think for me, that's really important, to have my networks outside of my company. And I do take real strength from that, actually. And I really look forward to those meetings as well. People I've met along the way, friends, you know, in industry or in different industries who are kind of in senior positions particularly. It makes me feel really grounded. But it also makes me realise that a lot of the conversations that we're having, they're happening in every single industry. It's not particular to ours necessarily. Ours is possibly more visible.
Mm.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Find your tribe is just such for me, it's such an important mantra or sort of guiding star, that making sure that there's a crew of people, both at work for the immediacy of it, but yeah, a group that you can lean on and who are there for the crazy, but also remind you of your brilliance. Because I think it's really easy for us to just keep, I messed that up. It's like, yeah, but you do that, you're that. Like, so there's getting a tribe of people around you that make you laugh and remind you that you're great, and tell you not to worry about the crazy stuff.
I think laughter is good. I mean, crikey. I mean, as you both know, I draw strength from having a laugh. I mean, life is quite tough, and I know this year's been weird, and I keep expecting Tom Cruise to kind of come out in a suit or something, and we've all been in this crazy film for the last year, and it's not real. Like, it is odd, isn't it? But I think, yeah, I would agree with all those sentiments and in terms of the tribe, but also I'm terrible at this, but finding some stillness some calm is quite key, isn't it? If you're busy and stressed, I'm not sure probably if any of us are particularly good at that, but you know,
what is this calm that you speak of?
Yeah, I know. I don't think any of the industries within this circle allow for that. You know, it's frenetic, isn't it? And you have to be a certain type of personality, I guess, to do that.
Very interesting. I was having a conversation with some female colleagues of mine the other day, and then one of my male colleagues jumped on, and we were having a conversation. We were waiting for people to come onto the Zoom call, as you do. And we were saying, we were talking about, what's your guilty pleasure? What do you watch that's your guilty pleasure? And they were sort of talking about like America's Next Top Model, or, you know, whatever it might be, something really kind of schlocky or trashy. And my colleague came on and he was like, oh, you know, he watched a sort of slightly less than highbrow drama. And we were going, no, where's the pleasure in that? You need something that can wash over you. You know,
there is something about that female network. You know, you're in tune with each other, aren't you? You are massively.
Yeah.
I always think that it's really nice we were talking about self-reflection earlier, but to reflect on our younger selves is quite interesting. I personally do it quite a lot, because I think I've learned quite a lot along the way. I'm certainly more confident anyway. But if you know, your 20-year-old self, what kind of advice would you give them? I always like to ask my interviewees this, because I think it says quite a lot about them, but also about the journey that they've been on. Jenks, do you want to go first? What would you?
Yeah, I was asked this recently, so I definitely do know my answer. And we've talked a lot about imposter syndrome. I think I would tell my 20-year-old self that you're going to get it. And I do know it's coachable. You can coach it out of you. And actually, although we've been referencing it, I might, even though new job under lockdown, I might have felt it really like once or twice this year. But for my first 15, 20 years of my career, I would have been feeling it pretty much every day. So imposter syndrome is going to paralyze you, it's going to hold you back, but it's completely coachable. There are books, there are people, and it's just your brain, literally your brain, trying to look after you because it knows you're slightly out of your comfort zone. And as soon as you realize it's cognitive, as soon as you can find a way of compartment, it's completely manageable. And it actually means that you're doing a wicked job because you're pushing yourself forward. So I tell myself, imposter syndrome is a thing, you've got it, you can manage it, and don't let it hold you back.
That's brilliant.
Mine sort of, it kind of stems from that actually, which is your opinion matters. And that was something I for a long time, and I think it held me back. And I don't know whether it was the imposter syndrome, being a woman in you know, sort of quite a male sort of dominated world, particularly at the beginning of my career. But my opinion does matter, and I just need to say it with confidence. You know, people might not always agree with it, of course, but it doesn't matter. It's my opinion.
I don't think males suffer from worrying about whether their opinion is positive. Yeah, thank you for those. I think it's always really insightful. Mine is always be a bit kind, or be kinder to yourself. Terribly hard on myself, both physically and mentally. Where this quest for perfection came from, I have no idea. But you know, be kind. You know, you're great. It's a kind of, you know, you learn that along the way, don't you, a little bit. To end on, because I know obviously I wanted this to not be too long, because I know you have very busy diaries, was just what can we look forward to? Because I think, you know, to bring us to circle this off with joy, what treats have you got? Have you got anything lovely you can tell us about from a creative perspective that's coming up?
We have, but we'd have to kill you.
Oh no, I mean, it's on air now, or you know, it's just, it's already out there. Not anything for next year.
We've got some more fabulous 24 Hours in Police Custody, which are always such a joy to watch. They are absolutely stonking. I mean, I don't know if you saw the one the other day, but we've got about more A&E, and we have got some other things in the pipeline that I can't actually talk about because we haven't announced them, which we're really excited about, including possibly some drama as well. So we're moving into that world. So it's I feel very optimistic about 2021. 2020 has been an absolute shithole. Sorry, am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, totally. As that lady said on CNN, which I was glued to, by the way, the election. She was like, "It's been a shit show," and I thought, if she's saying it on CNN, we can all say it wherever we want, basically. What about you? What about you, Jenks? What joy do you bring us?
Well, I think everyone's worked so hard this year. It's been brutal, hasn't it? But there is stacks of momentum. There's some awesome, I get to work with some brilliant people, and I know they're going to be absolutely flying as they go into 2021. And so I'm really looking forward to so many brilliant people sort of finding their next level. And things like our diversity approach, you know, I cannot wait to see what happens with our school project, for example. So that's coming through. Yeah. Reasons to be cheerful, President-elect Biden. I think a big whoop whoop. So
I've been obsessed as well. Yeah.
The axis has turned, and we won't have a racist in the White House. So that's
I know, it's really good news that
normalized racism for 4 years.
I bet if you spoke to the office in the States, or the several offices in the States, I bet they were like, oh my goodness, you know, it's a massive thing, isn't it, for the world?
Huge for them.
Thank you so much. I look forward to, can I just say before we go, the 24 hours in A&E, that double bill, is that the one you were talking about?
Oh, police custody.
Police custody, yeah, with the drugs one.
I haven't seen it. Nicola, I love it. I don't, because I haven't, no spoilers. I love it. It is the best. It is an amazing program, and I cannot. I'm saving up because I can't be on my laptop and if you're watching it. So yeah,
watch that one. That's great. That was really good.
Yeah,
that was really good. Thank you so much. You've been brilliant, and I am thrilled that you took the time out for this. Thank you so much, and I hope everyone enjoys the conversation.
Pleasure.
Thank you.